We've been talking with Gordon Chang. We've been talking about China's aspirations and some of the weapons that they may be using. And he brought up one of the most frightening, futuristic concepts that I don't know how else to describe it. It's a bad sci-fi movie that kills a bunch of people and enslaves the rest of them. And that is the idea of a bioweapon that ethnically targets individuals, maybe prevents the Chinese from getting sick, but the rest of the world gets sick. So, Gordon, we talked about whether or not it's possible. They're working on it, there's no doubt. And the last thing you said was, that they're scooping up all of our DNA information. They could literally target down to the individual level potentially with that.
Well, for sure. So, for instance, ancestry companies, you have your DNA analyzed. Well, about a half year ago, there were 23 or so Chinese or Chinese-linked institutions that were certified to provide DNA sequencing for these ancestry companies and others. We have these research partnerships between American institutions and Chinese ones. And also they bought Complete Genomics, which had one of the largest collections of DNA profiles. That was in 2013. So in many different ways, they are collecting DNA profiles of Americans. And I think that they believe that this is actually possible. And I'll just give you an example. My wife is from Hong Kong. And when she was growing up, during flu season, Chinese people would get flu, but it'd be very mild. Among the Chinese people in Hong Kong, flu season was thought to be a British disease because it affected the British disproportionately. Well, what's the coronavirus? I mean, it's just sort of a variant of the flu. So I think that they indeed are trying to perfect these specific ethnic genetic attacks. Bill Gertz has written about this, about how American officials are deeply concerned that China is doing this type of research. So we have to assume that they're some way along the path. That's not to say that they have gotten there yet, but it is to say that we've got to be concerned because these are civilization killers. Because the next pathogen from China could actually just leave China as the world's only viable society.
Wow.
And that is consistent with what they are trying to do, which is rule the world.
Well, one of the things they've learned from this is they, in general, can get away with it. If it's true that the virus was released accidentally or otherwise, if it's true that they lied about it, and that's pretty well documented, and if it's true that they capitalized on it, they've learned the lesson. This is effective.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a really important point you raised because Xi Jinping right now, he knows what he did. This was deliberate. This is actually the first time one nation has attacked all the others in the world. And nobody's imposed costs on China for doing this. So that means in his mind that he can spread the next pathogen with impunity. So, people talk about justice, they talk about compensation. Yes, those are important. But what's really important is deterrence. We have to deter Xi Jinping from spreading the next disease. And right now we've given him incentives to do so.
Yeah, well, you look, there's no doubt that the Chinese preferred Donald Trump out of the White House. He was no friend of the Communist Party there. And now they see potentially a very weak American president, particularly after Afghanistan. So if they're going to do something, they might try and do it during this administration.
Yeah, I mean, the mentality of Chinese leaders right now, just in general, go beyond Biden, Trump, and whatever. Their belief was that the U.S. is in terminal decline. And according, we're starting to see also hints that they believe that political disarray in Washington. Thank you, General Milley, for getting that notion across to the Chinese, which is another story. But the point is, the Chinese have generally had this notion that they were going to take over the world. And so they have looked at Biden as a particular target. We know this because Di Dongsheng, that academic from Renmin University in Beijing, gave that infamous November 28th seminar, which was broadcast around China, where he specifically says, during the Trump years, our levers of influence in Washington were broken. Trump wasn't listening to Wall Street. He wasn't listening to Henry Kissinger. We couldn't influence Trump. But they were saying that with Biden about to be coming into the Oval Office, because this was November 28th,
right,
that they expected that they would again be able to determine outcomes at the highest level of the American political system because their friends in the United States would have influence with the president. And by the way, Di Dong Sheng mentioned Hunter Biden.